Well, I'm not too sure actually how you would go about your job and do it to the best of your ability without contacts. For me personally, I rely on them heavily, and that's not just to create stories. I will often ring contacts to pick their brains and find out how I should be going about a story, pick their brains about what kind of questions I should be asking. So keeping in touch with your contacts, I think, is crucial.
The amount of stories that I've covered because contacts told me about them, I couldn't even begin to tell you how many stories I've gotten from contacts, basically. It's like asking me how many stories I've covered, full stop. That's where a lot of your stuff comes from, particularly as a regional journalist. That's where a huge percentage of your stuff comes from, is stuff that's happening in the community and being told about it by members of the community, or by going and seeking it out by cold calling or just doing the rounds of your contacts as well.
One of the first things I did when I came to Cairns was actually imported all of the contacts that the previous reporters had already had written down in a number of different notebooks. I spent a joyous couple of days typing them all into our iNews computer system.
So you inherited contact books that had been left behind by other reporters?
That's right, and that's been a great help. And
wow.
I did the same when I left Mildura. I left a list of contacts behind for the next reporter, so that you're not starting completely from scratch. At least there's a starting point, and that was what I did in those first few days. As I was copying those contacts in, I was giving them a ring and just saying, hi, you might remember Adam Stephen, who used to be the rural reporter here. I'm Nikolai, I'm the new guy, and I'll be talking to you over the next coming months and years.
Good contacts aren't just people who give you interviews that you can put on the radio. They're also people that you can talk to who will give you context and background to an issue, so that when you do eventually find someone who can talk to you on the record, your questions are going to be much more deep, much more meaningful, and much better for your audience, fundamentally, in the end. Also, as one person, you can only be engaged with a small proportion of the community that you're covering. Your contacts are your eyes and ears across the community as a whole, so they're vital.
I think keeping in touch with your contacts is really important, and you shouldn't restrict calling people to only the times when you want a story. For me, here in the Kimberley, we've got a pastoral industry that stretches across huge distances. It's twice the size of Victoria, the Kimberley, and so we've got all of these isolated stations. And often, if I notice I haven't spoken to one of the stations for a while, I'll just call them up to sort of say g'day, ask them how things are going, let them know what's been going on in my patch, and just have a general chat about things. I also will often ring up contacts to pick their brains. Let's just say I'm about to interview the Agricultural Minister about maybe a meatworks being built in the region. I will ring up some of the stations and ask them what sort of questions they would ask the Minister, and that serves a couple of purposes. It means you're then asking questions that your audience wants to know the answers to, but you're also keeping in contact with those people who matter, and you're not just ringing them up to sort of say, can you help me out on the story.
The other thing I do, which I don't think quite so many other people do, is I'll add in little notes as I've spoken to people.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, so I find that useful, because when because we speak to so many people, and you occasionally do have a little mind slip of whether you've spoken to this guy before or not, you can say, if you leave a little note saying, oh okay, I spoke to him about being a young farmer a couple of months ago, so next time I ring him, I can say, oh, it's Nikolai, remember I spoke to you a couple of months ago about being a young farmer? And then you've tried and kind of got that rapport straight away.
Also, if you're a reporter who has a job where you can get out in the field, on the ground, do it. Go to field days, go to events, go to community things, and just meet people. Again, not necessarily with an eye to getting a story right away, but just to actually meeting people and letting them know who you are, and letting them know that you're a nice person and that you're someone who they want to talk to, hopefully, at some stage in the future.